If there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's this: the sound of rain can lie to you. It can sound safe, soft, steady, familiar. And while your body relaxes, something else is sliding in through the tiny gaps it leaves open. I should have known better. I didn't. Maybe you wouldn't either. My name is Tyler. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment above a pizza joint in a town that closes at midnight, but never really sleeps. I work nights at a warehouse on the edge of town. Inventory, forklifts, shipping manifests. The hours are brutal but predictable. Midnight to 8 a.m., fluorescent light, a thermos of bad coffee. Days blur together. Sleep becomes a small, sacred thing. 4 hours here, 5 if I'm lucky, always in the harsh light of morning. Insomnia lives with me like an old roommate. I used to use podcasts to pass out. Then ASMR channels. Lately, it was rain. I don't know why. Maybe because the city where I grew up had storms that sounded like a whole other world on a tin roof. Rain felt like home some nights. So when I found a thread on an obscure forum, one of those corners of the internet you only visit because you're too awake and too bored to sleep, and someone had uploaded a file titled Rain Sleep Mix, Deep Sleep 8 Hours. I clicked it. It was one of those posts where the ops swore it was clean. No embedded binaural beats, no subliminal messages, just pure rain. The comments were the usual. Works like a charm. Helped me study. Best rain vid ever. Somebody with the username NightShiftMegs replied saying it helped them sleep after their partner left. I saved the file and went on with my night. The first night I tried it, I listened with headphones. That should have been my first warning. Headphones isolate you. They're how you let something in quietly, without the building noise or a roommate's TV to remind you you're not alone. The rain sounded perfect. Close, like it was on the roof right above me. It had layers, a distant rumble, the steady patter, the soft hiss as it soaked the porch wood. It felt like being wrapped in a wet blanket. I lay there and my eyelids got heavy, the way they do when you haven't slept and the world lets you down into the dark. Then, after maybe 10 minutes, I heard a voice. It was something between a whisper and a wet breath, exactly in the left ear. So soft, I thought it was my imagination. I froze. The voice didn't speak words at first. It was a rhythm, a cadence like someone counting with their lips closed. I laughed nervously, ripped the headphones off, and the rain was still there, obvious, steady, unremarkable. I blamed fatigue. I put the headphones back on to check the file, convinced I must have misheard some overlay, and the voice was gone. That should have been enough. I should have deleted the file, blocked the uploader, and gone back to my shitty apartment mattress. But there's a thing insomnia does. It convinces you that anything that nudges you towards sleep, even a little, is a miracle. I tried the track again the next evening. This time the voice came faster and clearer. It moved in and out of the rain, whispering something like "stay," and then a little later, "listen." It didn't sound like English at first, but it learned. The more I listened, the more it learned. paused the file, the whisper trailed off like someone walking away from the microphone, and I felt, silly as it sounds, as if I'd caught someone eavesdropping on me. I started to notice little things after that. My smart speaker, the one I use for music, would play the rain track at odd volumes when I didn't ask it to. Once, the rain sound woke me up before my alarm, steady as a metronome, and I found the file open on my laptop, even though I never left it on. I told myself it was a glitch. Technology glitches all the time. Then Megan texted. Megan is the kind of friend who knows too much about your life because she's seen all of it. We met at a gas station 2 years ago when both of us were working the graveyard shift. She worked midnights at a diner, and I was still learning the forklift. She has a bright laugh and a tendency to call everything dumb but useful. We were the kind of friends who swap playlists and pass each other weird Reddit links at 3 a.m. She sent me a screen recording of a message. It was a short clip, about 12 seconds, recorded with the rear camera of her phone. In it, she's sitting in her car outside the diner. Rain is spitting on the windshield, and she's holding a cup of coffee with both hands, the light from the street lamp making the steam glow. Then the audio stutters for a second, and for one beat, something overlays the rain, the same cadence I'd been hearing, and Megan freezes. "I don't like this," she says in the video. Her voice sounds small. "Ty, did you hear?" Then the recording ends. I texted back, "What did you hear?" She replied with a single sentence. It said my name. Megan's text sat on my phone like a stone. I called her. "Are you messing with me?" I asked when she picked up. "No," she said. "Ty, I heard my name." It said it like someone who knew how to make me stop breathing. It was hard not to scoff. But then she sent me the clip. I put it on as soon as I could, headphones in, and the rain filled my ears. There, tucked under the hiss, was a voice that sounded like wind through a vent. And then, clear as if she were in the car with me, it said, "Megan." The sound wasn't loud, but it was pure intent, the kind you hear when someone wants your attention and is willing to wait for it. We both laughed because laughter is the only defense we had. "Maybe it's an ad," Megan said. "Some creepy marketing thing." "Maybe," I said. But I had been saving the file from that forum. I sent it to her. Megan listened for 3 nights, and then she stopped answering. Not the friendly, busy stop, the silence that stretches like a cold room. I called. No answer. I showed up at the diner in the middle of my shift, dripping from the rain and carrying a bag of coffee. The diner was dim, closed, and the night manager told me Megan hadn't come in. He shrugged and said she'd called saying she'd take the next few days off. She never came back to work. 2 days later, her brother called me. She left her shift and didn't go home, he said. Her car is at the diner. Her phone is off. She took her raincoat and her bag, and she's gone. The police listed her missing. They found nothing at first. No evidence, no messages, no footprints in the rain. I sat in my living room and played the rain file until dawn, as if witnesses might rewrite themselves into being if I let the sound keep telling them what to do. I started started waking up in the middle of the night, not sure if I'd really gone to bed. Sometimes I'd be on the couch, fully clothed, the headphones still around my neck, and the rain file playing softly from my phone. Other times I'd be in the bed, face wet with tears that weren't mine, my phone gallery filled with videos I didn't remember filming, 10-second clips of the ceiling, my hand, a shadow moving across the hallway. In one clip, I'd filmed my own apartment door from the inside, and the timestamp read 3:12 a.m. I had no memory of getting up. That kind of memory gap is the kind that eats at you. You start to look for explanations, medication, late night driving, stress, but there's nothing rational that explains why my neighbor knocked on my door last Tuesday morning, eyes red, whispering, "You were yelling last night, Tyler. You were saying you were sorry to someone." "I wasn't," I told him. You were saying, 'I'm sorry, get out,'" he insisted. It sounded like you were arguing. It stopped when I banged on the wall. I listened to the recordings the police gave me from the diner's parking lot camera. Megan's car sits there, empty and soaked, the wipers moving. A figure crosses the lot at 3:14 a.m., slender, hunched, hood up, heading down the street away from the diner. The grainy footage doesn't show much, but the camera picks up audio, rain, faint traffic, and then on the left channel, that same rhythm. For 2 beats, it sounds like counting, then a whisper. The transcript the police ran came back gibberish, but my skin went cold when I heard the whisper at the end. Megan. I went back to the forum to trace the upload. The account that had posted the file was gone. Night Shift Megs's username had been deleted. There was to be 1,000 plausible reasons for that. An account ban, the uploader deciding to scrub their history. But every instinct in my body told me to keep digging. A throwaway user had replied to my thread and said casually, "If you want the original, look up the old motel recordings." They linked to an address, a 2-hour drive north of my town, an old motor inn by the interstate. The kind of place chained to its past, flickering neon, a vacant pool, stories told in the voices of truckers. The motel was called the Hollow Pines. I drove there the next day like someone who needed stitches. The highway between my town and the Hollow Pines is a long, straight ribbon of blacktop with trees pressing close on both sides. The sky was clear, no rain at all. The motel sat back from the road like something holding its breath. It had the architecture where every room looks the same and nothing good ever happens. At the front desk, behind a haze of cigarette smoke, an old man named Walter took my cash without asking why I was there. He had a voice like broken glass, softened by years. "You run a channel?" he asked after I told him I'd heard something. "No," I lied. "I'm just research, trying to find an old recording." He nodded like he'd expected that. "A lot of people come through for that," he said. "Some don't leave." That line should have scared me. It did, but it didn't stop me. Walter gave me a room in the East Wing. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without the rain file. I slept with the motel TV on, the static filling the room, and for 6 straight hours, I dreamed like a kid. When I woke, it was morning, and the world smelled like hot coffee and bleach. I checked my messages. Nothing new. I felt sane for a few hours. Then I heard it, soft at first, like wind in the blinds. The motel room had a small balcony that looked out over the old pool. The surface of the water was motionless in the light. But through the thin glass, the sound of rain was there, years of rain. And inside it, woven as if by hand, was a whisper that said, "Tyler." I laughed out loud because there was no reasonable explanation. The weather was fine. The motel sat in the sun. Walter stared at me from the front desk, as if he'd read the panic in my face. "You hear it now?" he asked. "No," I lied again. But he told me a story while I stood there, palms sweating. "Years back, there was a kid, maybe 19, maybe 20, he said. He recorded storms, kept them on tapes in his room, said he could capture something in the noise. He died in his room. They found him with the tapes and the recorder on. The police wrote it up as suicide. People still come looking for the tapes. People still say the rain on those tapes is never just rain. That should have made sense. It made sense. People get obsessed. They record. They push boundaries. They break. But it didn't explain why those tapes were whispering names to me across town. The motel's old office had boxes of cassette tapes. They were labeled in a messy hand dates, times. Storm 1094, room 12. I found a small stack hidden under a desk with the name E. Harper written on it. The cassettes were taped up like something dangerous. I didn't think. I just took one and shoved it into my bag. Back at my car, I popped the tape into an old player Walter had insisted I could borrow. I put my headphones on and closed my eyes. At first it was rain, heavy, a roof getting hammered, close and personal. Then there was a voice. It sounded like the memory of someone who'd been listening to the rain for years and finally learned to speak with it. "You are here," the voice said. It didn't sound male or female. It sounded like every voice you've ever remembered in a thunderstorm. "You listen, and we are fed." I ripped the headphones off and nearly threw up. The player clicked off as if it had been turned down by invisible hands. For a second, everything was normal. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, and the screen filled with photos I hadn't taken. A night shot of the motel pool, an image of my hand on the tape player, a blurred photo of someone standing in the motel corridor with their hood up. The timestamp on each photo was 3:12 a.m. I drove home, and the highway looked different. The trees seemed to watch. When I pulled into my driveway, it was raining. A sudden, local storm that had come in silence and wrapped itself around the neighborhood. I sat in the car, headphones on, the tape playing from a tiny player in my lap. The rain on the tape and the rain outside lined up like 2 tracks in sync. The whisper moved from the tape into the world, like something pressing its ear to my life. I started to think I could beat it. If it was a recording, I could delete it. If it was a file, I could wreck the drives. I copied the tape to my laptop and then smashed the tape with a hammer. I deleted the file from my phone and factory, reset the device. The rain track vanished. For a week, I slept properly. For a week, I felt safe. Then my neighbor's kid, a teenager named Jason, who liked late-night skate videos and bad takeout, came over to borrow a charger. He stayed for coffee. He was abrupt, scrolling through his phone, and then he froze. "You've got this rain track," he said, eyes wide. My little sister was listening to it last night. She kept saying she heard her name. Now she won't go outside. She says the rain talks to her. "I deleted mine," I said. "I burned all my copies." Jason laughed, but his voice trembled. "It doesn't matter," he said. "You can't kill it. It's like when someone learns a song and everyone sings it. By then, I'd stopped sleeping without a window open. I needed to know when it was raining, because that's when the sound seemed strongest. I started recording everything. The hum of my refrigerator, the radio in the neighbor's house, the building's intercom as someone buzzed up a package. Sometimes, when a storm rolled through, the recording would reveal faint overlay voices I hadn't heard in real time. Names, the word stay, a wet, patient sigh like someone standing at the mouth of the room, waiting for permission to enter. At 3 a.m, I woke to the sound of someone moving through my apartment. My bedroom door was closed. The headphones were around my neck. I reached for my phone, and the screen lit up with a video I hadn't made, me sleeping. The footage was taken from across the room, and the timestamp read 3:13 a.m. I watched myself sleep and suppress a small animal noise from my throat because I saw my mouth move as if forming words. I sped the video up and then slowed it down. And in the slowed frames, my lips were shaping syllables I didn't remember saying. The police came out after Megan's brother insisted they do more. They checked my place, ran my devices, found nothing conclusive. Sleepwalking, one of them suggested. Medication, stress. They asked about my relationship with Megan. They asked if I'd been drinking. I answered honestly. I drank coffee like it was negotiation. I was up late. I'd been listening to rain files. The investigator eyed me like I'd given him the plot to a bad horror movie. "You can't prove audio does this," he said, "but we'll keep your devices. For now, go stay with someone." I stayed with my mother for a few nights. She lives out of town and makes soup like an apology for the world. I thought the distance would help. It didn't. I would wake in her guest room to the sound of rain when there was none. Once, I watched from a window as a line of cars drove through sheets of clear weather, and their headlights flared like something you watch in a bad dream. It started happening to other people. A coworker took a rain file home for relaxation and came back to work looking shell-shocked. "My wife won't sleep," he told me. "She says the rain keeps telling her secrets. She thinks it knows where we keep things." A woman in Megan's neighborhood posted on a local forum that every time it rained, her elderly neighbor called about a leaking roof. But when she checked, there was nothing wrong. He's convinced someone been whispering outside his window, she wrote. The pattern was ugly and scattered, and the internet is a clever creature for swallowing patterns like that into rumor. The less scattered parts were the important ones. Every time someone listened to a specific track, something in their life shifted. Things disappeared. People left. Names were whispered, and the whisper seemed to learn the people who heard it like a predator learns a territory. Then I found the footage. A tech at the police department had been kind enough, or careless enough, to burn a DVD of my digital backups for me. On the disc was a video I hadn't expected. Footage recovered from a street camera near the motel. The clip is small, 23 seconds. It shows the hollow pines corridor at night. Water drips from the eaves. For a beat, there's nothing in the frame. Then a figure appears in the distance, walking toward the camera. You can't see its face. It's hunched. Its hand seems to be empty. But as it moves closer, it carries something white and round that glows faintly. At 3:12 a.m., the figure passes in front of the motel camera, and for a flash, it turns and looks directly into the lens. The audio on the recovered clip is mangled, but the waveform contains compressed, repetitive frequencies where words would be. When an analyst ran an enhancement on the file, the pattern they revealed read like this: a layered track that used rain as its carrier, with whispered syllables manipulated to mimic local voices. Stitched within was a phrase that, when transcribed and slowed down, read, "We sleep here, and the rain remembers." I felt like someone had taken my hand and pushed it into a fire. The deeper we dug, the stranger the history got. The motel had been built on land where a small, unincorporated campground had once been. Locals joked about the old hollow, where kids used to sneak off to drink and tell ghost stories. There were records of police calls for noise, and a handful of deaths that had been attributed to bad wiring and bad luck. Files on microfiche showed a name that repeated: E. Harper, Emily Harper. The same name on the cassettes. An obituary from 20 years earlier listed Emily Harper as a student at the local college. We'd been found dead in her motel room after a storm. I drove to the college archive with an older professor who liked conspiracy theories the way other people like coffee. He pulled a brittle newspaper page from a box and pointed to a photo. It was Emily Harper, young, hair tucked under a raincoat, eyes like a dare. The article about her death mentioned that she was a sound design major who experimented with field recordings. She left a journal, the piece said, and in that journal she had written about listening to storms like someone studying language. The professor turned the page. "There's this quote," he said. "The rain tells me what it needs," she wrote. "If I play it back, it answers." I wanted to stop. Instead, I kept going. I wanted to know what it answered. At the library, I found a copy of Emily's journal preserved in archival plastic. Her handwriting is frantic in places, precise in others. They're learning, one entry read. At first, it was like a rhythm. Then they learned to make names. When I slow them down, I can hear them thinking. If I speed it up, the rain tries to remember my name. One page made me drop the journal and shove it away like something alive. In a dated passage, she wrote, "I taught it to say stay." It said it like a bird. It asked me to sleep. I did. I woke up and I knew someone else's coffee in my mouth. If you find this, don't play it at night. The journal ended abruptly. The logic stitched itself in a terrible, ugly way. Someone, Emily, had been experimenting with the rain as a medium. Maybe she'd found a way to isolate patterns in the noise that human brains could interpret as words, and then loop them. Maybe she'd recorded that and never stopped listening. The act of listening seemed to train the sound to be more effective, like teaching a raccoon where the food is, like training a voice to call names until names answer. If anything else explained how the rain moved from tape to world, I couldn't find it. It didn't matter if the rain was coming from a speaker or from above. Once someone trained it, the pattern could appear in any rain on any night. It could ride on a hum, on a radio station, on the rustle of leaves. It could crop into the background of a diner security camera. Once it had a host, it could propagate. That's the first twist I didn't see coming. It wasn't just about a file. The file was a vector. The rain, real rain, is the network. I thought destroying every physical copy would cure it. I drove to the hollow pines in a windstorm and burned boxes of tapes Walter handed me without complaint. The smoke smelled like old glue and bad decisions. We watched the flames, and for a minute, I felt like a man who had stopped a war. The next morning, the rain returned, and the whisper drifted through the motel corridors like a rumor. The east wing smelled like smoke, and nothing had changed. I tried to inoculate myself. I used white noise. I opened windows and let the building sounds in. I started going outdoors during storms and walking until my feet were so numb the world felt flat. I learned to speak over the whispers, to talk loudly and angrily, in the rain as if noise could be a shield. It felt ridiculous, and then, once in a while, it felt like temporary pushback. Once, while yelling into a storm, I caught someone else doing the same from across the street. A woman on her porch, hollering at the clouds until her voice was raw. Then Megan's brother called again. He left a message on my sister's phone, he said, voice sharp as broken glass. They found a voicemail. It's Tyler. My throat went dry. I hadn't called Megan in days. He played the file. It was me. At least it sounded like me. I remember, vaguely, the memory of speaking in the night. But in the voicemail, my voice is different. It is low and patient and full of something I don't recognize. "I'm sorry," the recording says. "You shouldn't have listened. It's not rain. It's not rain yet." I didn't say that. I know that. My voice on the message says things I didn't say. The voicemail ends with the whisper saying Megan's name, and then the recording cuts off like someone smashed the phone. When Megan's brother told me he'd gone to look at the motel records again, he found something that made him stop breathing. There was a guest ledger entry from the night Emily Harper died. A young man listed his name as Tyler H. The handwriting looked looked shaky, and the time noted was 3:10 a.m. The name was mine. I'd never been to Hollow Pines before I drove there that week. I had trouble writing that down without laughing and crying at the same time. I spent hours trying to explain away the ledger entry. Maybe a different Tyler H., maybe a forgery. But then, the motel surveillance footage they ran for the police showed something else. A clip from months ago that I'd never seen. It shows me crossing the motel lot late at night with a camera bag slung over my shoulder, headphones over my ears, and a way of walking I didn't recognize. The timestamp is wrong. The metadata on the file shows inconsistencies. The footage is fuzzy, but my silhouette is there. I realized then that the worst twist wasn't the rain learning names. It was memory. Whatever this thing was, it was rewriting time like a jealous archivist. If you listened long enough, it could make you into a witness to things you swore you hadn't done. It could fold you into its history. I began to doubt myself. I began to doubt the edges of my life. I started carrying a cheap voice recorder and leaving it on the nightstand. I told myself I would prove I was not the one in the motel footage. I would prove I didn't sleepwalk to Emily's room, didn't teach the rain to speak, didn't leave messages on Megan's phone, on a night when the sky was angry and the clouds pressed low like a lid. I played back the last 8 hours of recordings from my phone. At 3:12 a.m., the recorder caught a sound that made my teeth ache. It wasn't a voice at first, but a pattern, a scraping whisper, then my own voice answering it. I heard myself in the tape say, "It wants to go home." Another voice, not mine, said, "We brought it." I sped and rewound until the tape wore thin, listening for something to latch onto. In one slowed section, I could swear the other voice said, plainly, and with the authority of someone describing a map, "You will show them." My hands shook so hard I could barely hit the keys on the recorder. The world felt like an accordion squeezed by someone else's breath. The more I tried to be the rational narrator of my own life, the more the edges frayed and the story untied. I have been trying to stop it in every way I can think of. I have smashed hard drives and flung phones into rivers. I have screamed into storms until my throat bled. I have gone to Walter at the motel and asked him if the recordings ever stop. He looked at me like I'd asked a tired man to chase his shadow. "It remembers what you feed it," he said. "Don't feed it, kid. But if it remembers, it will want its memories back. If there is a lesson here, it is that curiosity is not innocent. You think you want to know. You think you're clever enough to see the edges of a thing without stepping over them. Emily Harper thought that. So did I suppose. We all do. I thought if I could find Emily's original recorder, the one she used to splice the rain, I could reverse it. I could. I don't even know what I imagined. That was the thing about madness. It breathes logic into desperate gestures. I drove to the institute where Emily had studied and asked for the equipment locker. The young man at the desk found a battered reel-to-reel spool in the back, the original, labeled EMI. He handed it to me like it was a curiosity, not a loaded gun. I took it to my car, and for a moment, everything felt like a film set. Me, the spool, the storm rising in the background. I played the reel. The rain came back, thick and patient. Under it, a voice spoke a language that fit like a broken puzzle. At one point, the track swelled, and a chorus of names, Megan, Jason. A neighbor I barely knew rose like steam. My jaw clenched until I tasted metal. Then a voice, layered, edible, said, "He remembers now." There was a beat, and then another sound like glass. My breath left me. When I looked up, the parking lot was full of people standing in the rain, faces turned toward me. They weren't there a moment before. They'd come out of nowhere, drawn like moths. They looked ordinary and lost. Some clutched phones. Others held children. Their eyes were distant, like people who'd been listening to the same radio for 2 days, and the songs had started to go wrong. One of them, a woman with a child at her hip, said quietly, "We thought if we came to the source it would be safer." "There is no source," Walter said, appearing at my side. "There's only learning, and it learns faster than we forget." Everything accelerated. People started playing the tape on their phones. Someone in the crowd had a megaphone, and the rain track poured out of it like a message. Names echoed. People began calling each other. The rain stitched itself across the parking lot and into every porch light and car radio. Children clutched dolls and whispered the names they heard. The sound wasn't malicious. It was patient. It was like something that had finally made itself understood by a room of distracted listeners and was delighted. It wanted to be heard. Once that happens, once it finds an audience, I don't know if anything stops it. I left the spool on the roof of my car and drove away. That's not courage. It was cowardice lacquered with hope. I drove until my hands were numb, and the spool lay on the highway like a tin can, getting smaller in the rain. Megan's case is closed as a missing person. The police archive has a pile of unresolved reports. The internet has a thread that gets resurrected now, and then by people who think they've found the original upload. The motel still stands. Walter still smokes. People still tell their kids to stay indoors when it storms. As for me, I sleep with earplugs now and keep a recording device running. I don't trust myself when the rain starts. I have learned to answer the whisper before it can finish learning my name. That's a small defense. Talk over it, call out, be loud enough to remind the noise there are more things in the world than its small hunger. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it finds a way. If there's any comfort in this, it's that the rain doesn't choose at random. It chooses by exposure and by how willing we are to listen. The more we share the recordings and the more people who play them at night, the faster it propagates. That's why I smothered the tapes for a while and then felt the guilt of the people who came to the motel. Like cutting off a rumor doesn't stop the rumor's teeth from still existing. You might think this is a story about haunted audio files. It is. It's about the way small obsessions turn into networks. It's about how a sound use that habit against you. It's about a thing that rests in the gaps of memory and learns to say the names you love until you come running. I don't know if Emily intended to make something that could speak our names. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she just wanted to hear the language of storms. Maybe something else heard that attention and took advantage. I'm telling you this because if you find a file called Rain Sleep Mix or Hollow Pines Storm Recording or something that looks comforting, don't play it at night. Don't put it in your headphones. Don't let it be the last thing you hear before your eyes close. If you insist on listening, do it during the day with someone else in the room and with the windows open so you can hear the world breathe. One more thing. Last week, I woke to the sound of rain on the metal fire escape outside my building. I looked at the clock, and it was 3 in the morning. For a while, I lay there, listening, trying to will rational explanations into the shape of the night. Then, under the patter of water, I heard something I hadn't heard before. It wasn't a voice calling a name. It was a laugh, quick and small, like a child finding a secret. It wasn't my laugh. I opened the window. The rain smelled like wet dirt and something older. I sat up, and the last thought I had before I went back to sleep, horrible and clear, was that whichever of us had taught the rain to talk first had also taught it to be patient. If it remembers you, it will wait. If you hear rain tonight, don't fall asleep.